Hi, this is David Thompson again with DocuTech, bringing you episode 10 to our TRIDcast series. At DocuTech, we commit to being industry innovators in technology, compliance, and overall customer satisfaction. With that drive, we wanted to know what would be helpful information for our clients with the new TILA-RESPA integrated disclosures coming August 1st. These TRIDcast episodes are a direct response from the feedback we received. In this episode, we will be reviewing the general information section of the loan estimate. Today we're privileged to have with us Fred Gooch, DocuTech's General Counsel and Vice President of Compliance, and Anne-Marie Poirier-Marquez, one of DocuTech's Regulatory Compliance Specialists. Anne-Marie is responsible for helping prepare DocuTech for our upcoming TRID changes. She has 18 years of experience in legal and compliance and a great deal of knowledge that has been valuable not only to our organization, but our clients as well. A big thanks to both of you for being here today, and without taking up all the time, I'm going to hand it over to you, Fred.
Thanks, David. So today we're going to start going through a series of presentations where we're going to be doing a deeper dive into certain sections of the loan estimate and the closing disclosure. And there's a lot of information here for each of these sections, so we anticipate that we're going to be covering one section per TRIDcast. So logically, the first thing to go ahead and take a look at is the general information section on the loan estimate. So as you look at the loan estimate, the first thing that you're going to notice is that there is a place on there for the name and address of the creditor on the loan. And the bureau, that's located right there in the top left-hand section of the document. The bureau has given instructions that you can use a logo there, and so you can take that part of the document and make it consistent with the rest of your company's branding. Also important to notice is that on the right-hand side there is a required disclaimer that tells the borrower to save the loan estimate and to compare it with their closing disclosure. That's really the intention of what the CFPB wants the borrower to do. They want them to use these loan estimates as a shopping disclosure, and also to use it to compare it against their closing disclosure to see if the terms of their loan have changed. So as we take a look inside the general information section, you see the title of the document as the loan estimate, and then you also see the date issued. Now the date issued is the date that the loan estimate is mailed or delivered to the borrower or to the consumer. And it doesn't matter how you delivered the document, the date issued would in theory be the same. So if you're going to mail it, it's going to be the day that you placed it into the mail. If you're going to deliver it by hand delivery, it's the date that you hand it to the consumer. And if you're going to deliver it electronically, it's the date that it is delivered electronically with the consent of the borrower. Interestingly enough, that's been quite a technical challenge for DocuTech and for part of the industry, is trying to figure out how to make it so that we can update the dates so that they're always accurate, depending on whether the form goes out by electronic delivery or by paper fulfillment out of our fulfillment center. I think it's kind of funny that out of all of the changes that take place in the rule, one of the most technologically challenging issues is determining a way to make sure that the correct date issued populates on the form, because previously the rules weren't so granular. What it would allow you to do is it would allow you to generate the form and put the date on there, the date that it was generated. And then if it was mailed, it would have the date that it was generated out of the system. If it was mailed or if it was delivered electronically, it would have that same date on there. Well, now you have to have a different date in the circumstance where you're waiting for a borrower to consent to electronic disclosure. It has to have the date that document is generated. However, if you're going to wait a couple days and if the borrower doesn't consent, and then the document's going to go out of our fulfillment center through the U.S. mail, you have to regenerate the date on that document. You just can't use the same document set over and over. So there's got to be an iteration here. So I've found that that's one of the more interesting technological challenges that's come out of this rule, just with the process of fulfilling disclosures. The other important thing to note on the date issued is that if the mortgage broker delivers the loan estimate, it is the date that the broker mails or delivers the document as well. The next section on the document is the identification of the applicants. Anne-Marie.
And that seems simple enough. What we need to do is list each applicant's name, and we need to list each applicant's mailing address. And because we can have multiple borrowers and the section for this general information is so small, the CFPB allows us to add an additional page, if need be, to include all of that information for the applicant's name and mailing address. And of course, once we're providing these documents, the additional page will be formatted similarly to the loan estimate so as to not affect the substance clarity or meaningful sequence of the disclosure as the CFPB directs. So filling out the information for the applicant's name and mailing address seems easy enough. And now Fred will discuss the section on identifying the property.
Thanks. So the next section identifies the property, and simply this is where you're going to put the address of the property, including the zip code. Now, there could be times when the address is unavailable or there is no address. So in these circumstances, you're going to use a description of the property, like a lot number, but you're always going to have a zip code included here in the property description. Now, there could be circumstances where there is personal property that's also securing the transaction, and you could also include that personal property in this property description area. However, that's not required. And one thing to pay attention to is that you are not permitted by the rule to add an additional page to include other items of personal property if you don't have enough space. However, you are permitted by the rule to add an additional page if you need to disclose the addresses of additional properties. The next section is the sales price section.
This is the one portion of the general information section that deviates depending on whether it is a transaction that has a seller or a transaction that does not have a seller. If the transaction has a seller, then the words that you'll see beneath the heading of property will show the phrase sale price. If we end up with a transaction such as a refinance that does not have a seller, then this phrase will actually change from sale price to the abbreviation for estimated property value. When this is a purchase, so a seller would be included, we would be using the first example, and the value or estimated value that you use would be the sale price. If the sale price is unknown, then the estimated value that the property is would be the basis for the disclosure. If personal property is included in the sale price, you're supposed to use the price without any reduction for the separately appraised or estimated value of the personal property. So basically, you're only supposed to use the value of the actual real property and not include the value of the personal property. But you can use the amount of the personal property if it is included in the price because of something like, say, purchasing all of the furniture that's within the dwelling. Then you can use the aggregate amount if you would like to. For loans without a seller, then you would just use the appraised value or estimated value. But if those values are unknown, then a creditor can use the estimate provided by the borrower. The creditor can also use any appraisals or valuations that have been obtained prior to disclosure of the loan estimate. And if multiple appraisals or valuations have been obtained, the creditor can use any one of those amounts if they reasonably believe that one of those particular amounts might be used in underwriting.
So when you're looking at the different stages of the transaction, you might not have a good idea of exactly what the value of the property is. And so ultimately, it sounds like what we're going to be doing here is falling back on the standard that we have for all of the accuracy in the disclosures, which is the best information reasonably available to the creditor at the time the disclosures are made, right?
That's correct. And that brings us to the next section, which is loan terms.
So the first section in the right-hand column of the general information portion of the document discloses the loan term. So there are a few different scenarios that you need to look at here. First, if the loan term is in whole years, you're just going to simply describe it in whole years. So if it's a 30-year mortgage, it's going to say 30 years. If it's a 15-year mortgage, 15 years. 10-year mortgage, 10 years. However, when the loan term is more than 24 months, but it's not in whole years, you're going to describe it in years and months. So the example that's given in the commentary is if you have a loan term that's 185 months, it becomes 15 years, 5 months. And you're going to do 15 YR period, comma, 5 MO period. Another situation to look at is when the loan term is less than 24 months, but it's not in whole years. So in those circumstances, you're going to describe it in months with the abbreviation MO period. So it would be 6 months, 6 MO period, or 16 months, 16 MO period. Now, there could also be a circumstance where the term of the loan could be adjustable. So in those circumstances, you're going to disclose the term using a range of dates, but you're going to make sure that you disclose the maximum number of months. Next, Anne-Marie is going to cover the purpose section.
Under the purpose section, there are only one of 4 descriptions that can be chosen, and they are purchase, refinance, construction, or home equity loan. I'm sure most of us know what those definitions are, but as a refresher, if purchase is selected, that's obviously when someone is going to acquire some property with financing. If refinance is selected, then someone is trying to refinance an existing obligation secured by the property. Refinance also needs to be used in instances where the creditor is not the holder or the servicer of the original obligation. The next selection can be a construction loan, and those are used for the initial construction of a dwelling on the subject property. And the last selection can be home equity loan, and that is used in any other kind of instance that doesn't fall under the first 3 categories of purchase, refinance, or construction. So now Fred will discuss in more depth the product requirements.
This is where the requirements start to become a little bit more complex. So in the products section, you are going to disclose a payment feature and also a description of the interest rate is how I like to look at it. So the first thing that must be disclosed is any payment feature that may change the payment period. This includes the duration of the payment feature, and this is how it's going to be disclosed. So for instance, if you would have a description here. If you had an interest-only loan, it would say 5-year interest only. And some of the payment features that you need to disclose would be like negative amortization, right? So if the principal balance of the loan is going to increase due to the addition of the interest to the principal balance. If it's an interest-only feature on the loan, where one or more of the periodic payments are going to be only interest and not applied to the principal balance of the loan. Step payment loans is another feature that you would describe here. So this is where you've got a scheduled variation in the payment that's not caused by the change to an index. A balloon payment would also be described here. That's a situation where the payment is 2 times greater than the regular payment. A seasonal payment, where the regular periodic payments are not scheduled between specific unit periods on a regular basis. An example that you see in the commentary is a loan for a teacher that doesn't require payments during the summer months. One of the things that you need to remember here is that if the loan has more than one of these different payment features, you're only going to disclose the first applicable feature. So if you've got a loan with negative amortization and a balloon payment, you're only going to list the negative amortization because that'll come first, right? Because the balloon payment always comes comes at the end of the loan. So the next thing that you need to disclose in this product section is the type of interest rate. And Anne-Marie's going to go through how you're going to disclose that on this section of the document.
There are 3 different kinds of interest rates that need to be accounted for. The first one is an adjustable rate, the second one is a step rate, and the third one is a fixed rate. Under the adjustable rate, the interest rate may increase after consummation, but the rates and periods are not known at consummation. So the duration of the introductory rate or payment period and first adjustment period must be disclosed. So an example would be that an introductory rate is fixed for the first 5 years and adjusts every 3 years thereafter. this would be notated as a 5/3 adjustable rate. If there are any subsequent adjustment periods, those are not disclosed. Only the first rate is disclosed, just as the examples that Fred had previously on the product. If there are multiple features, only the first one is disclosed. If the introductory rate is not known, then the shortest interval should be listed. So if it's determined that the introductory rate will be somewhere between 36 and 48 months, adjusting every year, the amount listed should be the smallest interval. So in this example, it would be 3 for 3 years because it's 36 months. And because it's adjusting every year thereafter, then you would have a /1 after that for the adjustable rate. If there is no introductory rate, then a 0 needs to be disclosed. So an example would be no introductory rate, but it adjusts every year. So this would be a 0/1 adjustable rate. Now we'll move on to step rates. This is when the interest rate will change after consummation, and the rates and periods are known at consummation. So the duration of the introductory rate or payment period and first adjustment period have to be disclosed. So an example of this would be a step rate for the first 10 years, and then it adjusts every year thereafter. So the way that this would be notated would be 10/1 step rate. And as before in the previous examples for the adjustable rate, if there is no introductory rate with the step rate, then you would disclose 0. So a no introductory rate that adjusts every year would be a 0/1 step rate. A fixed rate is defined as anything that is not an adjustable or step rate. So the only thing that would be listed is the fixed rate. And if there is an additional feature, the fixed rate would be listed first. And now Fred is going to go over some further examples of how we describe both the payment feature and the type of interest rate.
Okay, so the commentary provides a couple of different examples of how you would disclose the payment feature and the type of interest rate in certain circumstances. So the first one that we're going to take a look at is in whole years. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to describe the situation, and then maybe you will want to pause the presentation and see how you would disclose this particular term. So the first term is a step rate loan with an introductory interest rate that lasts for 3 years and adjusts each rate thereafter until there is a balloon payment in the 7th year. So in this example, you would disclose a year 7 balloon payment, comma, 3/1 step rate. So you've got the balloon payment in the 7th year, so 7-year balloon payment, and then the 3/1 step rate tells you that you've got the introductory interest rate for 3 years, and then it's going to adjust every year thereafter. The next circumstance or situation that we're going to look at here is a fixed rate loan with a step rate feature for the first 2 years that may negatively amortize. So the way that you would disclose this scenario would be a 2-year negative amortization, comma, fixed rate is what you would put. So you've got the 2 years of possible negative amortization. That's the payment feature and the time that needs to be disclosed. And then you're going to disclose fixed rate. And the reason that you would disclose fixed rate would be because there are 2 different interest rate descriptions here, but the fixed rate would come first. So that's why you've got 2-year negative amortization, comma, fixed rate. The next couple of scenarios that we're going to look at is when you have a loan that does not break into simple whole year components. So if you have a time period of more than 24 months, you're going to use the applicable fraction of a year with a decimal place rounded to 2 places. This is kind of one of my favorite parts of the rule. So for instance, if you have an adjustable rate product with an introductory rate for the first 31 months and it adjusts every year after, what would you disclose? Remember that since this is for a period of more than 24 months, that you're going to use the applicable fraction with the decimal rounded to 2 places. So what you would disclose here is a 2.58-1 adjustable rate. I think that that's that's just interesting on a disclosure like this. A 2.51-1 adjustable rate, but those are for time periods of more than 24 months where it doesn't necessarily round to a whole number. The next circumstance that we're going to look at is where you've got a loan for time periods of less than 24 months. And in this circumstance, you're going to disclose the number of months with the abbreviation MO period, like we did earlier in the document. So let's take a look at this situation. You've got an adjustable rate product with an introductory rate for 18 months that adjusts every 18 months thereafter. How would you disclose? The commentary indicates here that you would disclose at 18 month, so 18 MO period dash 18 MO period adjustable rate. 18 month/18 month adjustable rate. So there are a lot of different combinations and a lot of different things you need to look at in order to make sure that you get the product description accurately disclosed on the loan estimate. Now remember, this is an important section to get right, because when you move to your closing disclosure and you're going to disclose this product type, you're going to look at how you disclosed in this section, whether it be on the loan estimate or the closing disclosure, to determine whether you have to wait your additional 3 days if you make a change to loan product. So this becomes very important, not only to how you're going to disclose on the document, but also your processes that you're going to have in place to make sure that you meet all the proper timing requirements under TRID. The next section that Anne-Marie is going to look at is the loan type section on the form.
There are 4 choices that you can choose from for loan type, and they are conventional, FHA, VA, and other. As most all of us know, a conventional loan is not guaranteed or insured by a federal or state government agency. And FHA loans are insured by the Federal Housing Administration, and VA loans are guaranteed by the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. If you're going to fill out the section for other, a brief loan description needs to be included, and this would be in instances where the loan insured or guaranteed is done by another type of federal or state agency not listed in the 2 previous choices above. And now Fred is going to discuss loan identification number.
So the loan identification number that needs to be disclosed on the form is the creditor's loan identification number that's used for the specific transaction. Now you're going to use alphanumeric characters, but the number that you use has to be specific to the transaction. The reason for that is that we need to make sure that the borrower can keep all of the loan estimates or the closing disclosures that they receive for a certain document or for a certain loan transaction, that they can all be identified and grouped together. So that's why the loan ID has to be unique. You cannot use the same loan number for a series of related transactions. So if you've got different loans to a single borrower, you need to have a different loan ID. Once again, so that each loan estimate and closing disclosure can be tied to the specific transaction. Also remember that if you've got a revised loan estimate, the loan estimate has to be sufficient so that it can identify the specific transaction that's associated with the initial loan estimate that was given. The final section on this portion of the loan estimate is the section on rate lock, and Anne-Marie is going to go over that with us.
The rate lock section is simple enough. There is a checkbox for either yes or no, and if no is selected, then you don't need to go any further. If yes is selected, then the date and time, including the applicable time zone, when the lock period ends, must be disclosed if the interest rate is locked at the time of the loan estimate's delivery. And the date and time, including the applicable time zone again, needs to be disclosed when the estimated closing costs expire.
So I think, Anne-Marie, that this is an interesting part of the document. Number one, we have time zone. That's an added element. That I don't think I recall seeing that on a disclosure like this before, as well as this. The specific time. And I think that the reason that they're getting so specific here is so that the borrower knows the exact date and time when all of these terms expire, and there's no question about time zone or anything like that. Am I accurate there?
Yes, you are. The one thing that I didn't find in the commentary, though, was whether or not they listed daylight savings time or standard time.
Oh, that's interesting. That wraps it up for the general information section of the loan estimate. We'll turn the time back over to David.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And again, thank you for being here today and sharing your knowledge and insight on the loan estimate. We definitely appreciate it. For all of our viewers, DocuTech would love to answer any of your integrated disclosure questions. So please submit your questions to trid@docutechcorp.com. Our next episode will be on June 30th at 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, where we will be discussing recent developments with the CFPB. To learn about DocuTech, see a previous episode, or get a copy of today's show sheet, visit our website at www.docutechcorp.com. You can also reach a member of our team at 800-497-3584. And again, thanks for watching.